Okay, all yours.
Tere, thank you for your time. I appreciate you joining the podcast. I'm excited to learn more about what you're building with Mural Ventures. But I want to start and talk a little bit about your background. What sparked this interest in sports investing? Like, where did that all begin for you?
Well, first of all, Malcolm, thank you so much for having me here with your audience and for allowing me to share a little bit about my story, the story of Mural. I also want to congratulate you on what you've built, not just in terms of the content, but also the investor platform that you're building, which is amazing. And I truly think it's essential to actually continue to build and scale the landscape where we both operate. So congratulations,
Thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Malcolm. So, as far as my background and I guess my experience, how I came into sports and media entertainment, I think my background has been focused on strategic and operational transformations of media companies for the most part. I am one of those persons that requires a lot of understanding of mission, vision, and then thrive in execution. It's been a passion to translate those big ideas into tangible results, and to do so through business models, but more importantly through really high performing teams. And so I have been fortunate enough to be able to do that in my career in media. I was a chief operating officer for Exile Content Studio, which started from being essentially a startup to becoming one of the major players in premium content production in Latin America. We invested in IP and we built a wide array of content, TV shows, podcasts, movies, music. And that company grew from literally, a startup company to being sold to Blackstone fund not too long ago. And so I guess, having seen what it takes to actually scale companies in Latin America or in Spanish speaking territories, realized early on that it doesn't just take a good product market fit, obviously, but it does take the having the right team in place to execute, and partnering up with the right investors who can make critical decisions or critical calls or open the right doors that can literally change the company's trajectory for the good. And so that led me to actually move into the investing side of things. So I started Mural about 2 years ago with one of my co-founders at Exile, and we're really excited in doing this advisory and investing in sports media and entertainment, because we think it's a very unique time to do so, not just because of what we see happening in mature markets like the States, but because in our territories, there's a lot of untapped opportunity where we can combine our expertise coming from media or expertise from having built, scaled, and sold companies, and translate that into strategic investments, into assets that are in need and much need for both capital, but also advisory and strategic work. So that's how it all started. I am a firm believer in that what we require in Latin America is access to capital solutions that are tailored to specific niche. And not too long ago, there was very little of that in our territory. So we're essentially building a platform for this to happen in a more consistent way. So we're very, very excited into that.
I love it. And I think Latin America, as a ecosystem is still obviously very nascent when it comes to sports investing. What do you think people are getting wrong or some of the misconceptions about the opportunity that's in Latin America when it comes to sports?
Well, I think that the opportunity is the same as you have in more mature markets, but I think that you do have to have some understanding of the nuance the cultural nuance, and the way business gets done locally. And that doesn't happen overnight. I think you need to be embedded into the culture, into the territory to really get a grasp of that nuance and to be able to actually use that to your advantage in order to scale the businesses and realize their full potential. Latin America, I like to say that the interest in their territory is growing. I like to say that we're always 5 to 10 years behind more mature markets where now everything is said and done and great playbooks are applied. And it's going through this very dynamic transformation where you're starting to see, public transactions signal that interest in that investment. Not too long ago, the recent acquisition of Querétaro, the soccer franchise from Liga MX, being bought by an American investor. You've seen recently IPOs of Club America, the other soccer team from Liga MX, Diablos Rojos, one of the major franchises, baseball franchises from Liga Mexicana de Béisbol. So you're starting to see that movement. And I think pairing that with, fan loyalty, fan bases that are very, very loyal, that have significant disposable income for actual like leisure and entertainment, is ripe for a recipe for success. It's a region where I don't know how much but 40% of the population is under 25. So this means like you have a young burgeoning middle class that has deep cultural passion for live experiences, for sports, is extremely passionate. So you combine the capital, the new level of liquidity that's coming into the market with, the fan bases and the consumption, and you pair that with what we're starting to see is a lot of sophistication from franchise owners who are actually investing in, data analysis and marketing, building strong brands and academies, right? You see federations optimizing their collective power, to create more robust infrastructures. You see a lot more sports venture happening. I think that whole ecosystem is really attractive, but you do need to have a foot on the ground to understand it, to know who's really moving the needle, who you want to partner with, in order to be able to extract that value from an investor standpoint, but also from a player, from an athlete standpoint, or from an owner standpoint.
For sure, and that's where you guys come in, having boots on the ground and really be invested and understand the ecosystem. What type of opportunities are you all most interested in or see the most upside in at Mural Ventures?
So at Mural, we're niche in that we focus on sports, media, and entertainment, but we're also very broad in terms of the type of assets that we look at daily that come through our pipeline. What I can tell you is, for the most part, we're very excited about growing and expanding leagues. Women's sports, for example, is a key focus. It represents a massive, high growth area and opportunity, and we're seeing a lot of, increased viewership and sponsorship into women's sports, starting with soccer. We're also very interested in tangential, like sports related businesses, like content production companies that are creating, these narratives that build on top of the whole ecosystem. Baseball and some of the expansion leagues are extremely attractive as well. The owners are doing the right things, playing the right way, investing in infrastructure and athletes. You see a lot of export of talent into leagues outside of these countries. And I would say that youth sports is also a space where we're excited as academies and tournaments turn to very predictable cash flow generating businesses that also have access to a very niche market that's attractive for brands, say the young, the demographic. And lastly, I would say that combat sports is one of our strengths, because our territories have historically bred champions. And boxing, for example, is the third most watched sport in the region, after soccer and baseball. So you have the huge pool of talent, in a very fragmented space. So we really like it a lot. We made a very big investment into the Premier Mixed Martial Arts League in Spain. That has experienced 400% growth year over year since our investment. And we're now looking to expand into Latin America because there's a lot of synergies and a lot of crossover. So combat sports is something that we really like. So I would say, we look at everything within the categories, but we're very niche in just in the ones that where we see growth potential, where we can just come in with capital, but also help them scale their companies.
And obviously, we're talking about Latin America. Still
Mhm.
being in the early stages of the opportunity and the growth potential when it comes to sports. And I imagine that's not going to be the case over the next several years. I think we'll see a lot more investors try to take a look at this landscape. How do you all see yourself differentiating yourself in this marketplace as more investors come in? Outside of providing capital.
Well, I think having first mover advantage is always important. I think ultimately the investments will speak for themselves. I think it's a very different thing to be an investor, but to be a good investor, that takes time, that takes work. And I think ultimately, having been born in the industry, and made good investments will obviously translate into better opportunities later on as the market gets more competitive. That being said, I think we pride ourselves in being very patient, very selective into the investments that we make. Not all of the investments are in the stage where we, thrive, where we can come in and help, but also not all of the potential assets are ready to take an investor and partner up with someone. And so it has to be the right pairing of the structure, the capital, the investor, and ourselves. So I would say that there's room for a lot more, strategic investors to come in. And I think that there are a lot of assets that would fit someone else's thesis. I think ours is very, straight, very to the point, and we're really looking to partner up with sports owners, with league owners that are interested in using some of our capabilities to actually expand and build new frontiers. So, not I would encourage more investors to actually take a serious look into the space, because I think there's opportunity for all.
hmm When it comes to founders, I think
Mhm.
there probably is a pretty consistent baseline for most investors for the type of founder they're looking to partner with or invest in. Are there any
Mm.
like outlier characteristics that you look for when you're talking to a founder or looking to invest in a company? Like any traits or
Um,
characteristics that someone may have that you think is unique to their success or potential success as a founder?
um, I think in my experience, the best founders that I've engaged with are those that know exactly well what they're really, really good at, but come to you as an investor for help in the things that they know and have clarity on, where they don't have expertise or are not the best at, that have that humility, maybe, and self awareness to recognize that great businesses get built on top of, great partnerships and great people. And so I think that one of the key criteria that we use when evaluating whether we make an investment in a certain company or not is that self-awareness of the founding team, of the owners, to recognize that together, 1 + 1 = 3, but truly. So I would say that's very, very important. And I think, the other thing, especially coming from our territories, is, partnering with operators that look at the possibilities outside of their territories, that think big. It's something that sometimes Latin Americans, we lack. We think very small. We think within the constraints of what we know and where we're born. And I think the globalized world where we live in, allows us to actually think bigger, larger. So why not? Why not create something that's larger than us, than life, in this particular niche?
I like that. Um, ch- are there any challenges that come to mind when you think of a Latin America founder versus someone here in the States, as far as uh, building a startup? Are there any specific constraints that come to mind, whether that's like infrastructure related or from a legal perspective, that Latin American founders face, that might not be the case here in the U.S.?
I think they're just different challenges. I wouldn't say ones, face bigger challenges than the others. I think they're just different. I think that my experienced founders in the U.S. Are much more used to a fast-paced environment where you start something out, you develop a product, you test it, you iterate, go back, try again, pivot, go ahead. And there's a big resilience, and it's okay to fail so long as you continue to try, right? Like, there's that, and you see that in founders all throughout. Obviously, there's a lot more sophistication in capital structures and access to capital that's specific to what they're doing. So you have, large funds, small funds, early stage funds, later stage funds that are dedicated to the sports and media category, for example. I think, entrepreneurs in Latin America sometimes find that there's less sophistication from an investor standpoint. Specifically in what we do, there's very little sophistication. There's very little strategic capital and dedication from funds. So that's definitely a challenge. I think, and then the other thing is the pace. In Latin America, we're very relationship driven. We're friends, we're amigos, we're family first, right? And so there's sometimes I feel like there's less of an urgency to actually go out to the market, prove, iterate, as opposed to in the States. Like, we take a little bit longer to do things, to handshake and get into action, right? But ultimately, that translates into stronger bonds. When you actually marriage or do or partner, translates into stronger bonds that are very long lasting,
Mhm.
and that can be critical at later stages in the company's life. So I think that there's different challenges. I am very excited to see the financial ecosystem mature in that sense, and to catch up for sure.
hmm You talked about this earlier. I'm curious about some of the cultural differences that you mentioned. Um, how do you see technology playing a role in improving the overall fan experience and enhancing the elements of culture and engagement within Latin America when it comes to sports?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think I don't think that's just for Latin America, but I do think that Latin Americans, because we thrive in this communal sense of living, I think technology needs to be used to connect the people that are experiencing sports or entertainment at large, and that opens the door for opportunities in commerce or etc. I think fans, uh, the way that fans engage with sports is also evolving here. So short form content, highlights, behind the scenes clips, things like that are becoming the primary driver for attracting new audiences, especially the younger audiences that I'm talking about that are essentially digitally native, right?
hmm
And I think sports needs to catch up with that. And, the franchises, the leagues, have to understand that consumption is different. I also think because we love the actual live experience of going into a stadium. And so I think that technology needs to transform the in-stadium experience for it to become a much more immersive entertainment event, going far beyond just watching the game. And we love the party, we love the fiesta. So I think to the extent that technology can enhance that cultural aspect of bonding, and of fun and of entertainment, I think that's going to be critical, specifically in our territories.
That's great. Last couple questions before I let you go. You talked about some of the, I guess, subsectors of sports that you all are most interested in. If you had to bet on one over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, whether it's like youth sports, women's sports, um, or even like a subsector of sports technology, like athletic performance. I know it's a tough question. What would you put your money on if you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a mainstay and it has a ton of upside long term?
It's a tough one. I don't have the magic wand. I think the sports category in general would continue to thrive.
Yeah.
Um, uh, whew, I don't know. I think that my if I can, my top three would be
Mhm.
definitely women's sports.
Yeah.
It's big, and I see it. I see it with, my generation, my kids' generation, the way sports is becoming a centralized aspect of the family life.
Mhm.
It provides discipline, it provides philosophy, it provides grit, and I think it's also a public policy issue. It provides a way out for a lot of people. So I think for a lot of women. And so I think women's sports are going to be huge, and we're seeing the trends. I also think that, um, believe it or not, I think that there's going to be a lot more sophistication in soccer, which will continue to be the prime sport in Latin America all throughout. You're going to see centralization of rights, of media rights. You're going to see investments in infrastructure for better in-stadium experiences. You're going to see a lot more transactions in soccer and franchises, and obviously a lot more talent movement from Latin Americans going into European leagues, into MLS or the U.S. leagues and back. So I would bet on women's sports, on soccer, moving into a next phase of institutionalization, if you will. And lastly, I do think that combat sports are going to find a way to actually, build um, a much more robust platform, whether those are MMA, boxing. We're seeing what TKO is now, trying to do. And I think our territories have a lot of talent that's just waiting for that, platform to take shape. So I would bet on those.
I love that answer. And then last question. If a Latin American sports tech founder was listening to this and you can give them one piece of advice, they're maybe struggling, with access to capital or scaling their startup, like what would you tell them about how to continue building and growing a company in this ecosystem?
I think first and foremost, understanding, where the need would be or is coming from, and where help could be most useful. If it's a capital issue, but the model is working, there's product market fit, and you're starting to see some traction, and the capital is the issue. I think, you know, which is why going back to your platform, I think is really relevant. Tapping into Mural is obviously one, but I think there are other investors that are very knowledgeable in the space, and connecting, right? So if it's an issue with the particular business model, and that's a different question. So understanding how to pivot that. If it's an issue with international expansion, for example, I think there's a lot of smart, companies, advisory work that's happening now. Or if it's a technological issue, right? Because nowadays I do believe that AI is going to change the way we conduct business. And it's not just in sports, it's not just in media, it's everywhere. So I think getting access to people that know how technology is changing fundamentally the business models is also going to be key. But ultimately, I think reaching out to the people, smarter people that know what they're doing and asking for help is going to be critical. Which is, hopefully that your platform allows us to connect those dots and those smart people with the ones that need the advice and vice versa.
For sure. Tere, this has been amazing. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Lastly,
you,
can you let
Malcolm.
people know where they can learn more about you as well as Mural Ventures?
For sure. Well, obviously, if you're interested in these topics in Latin America, sports, investing, women in sports, you can find me on LinkedIn, my full name, María Teresa Pérez Lobatón. Or if it's easier, we have a website and we have a contact information, muralventures.co, where you can just reach out to us directly. I'd be thrilled to just connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Malcolm. It was a pleasure.